Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of From Dusk Till Dawn, as well as the latest episode of Aftermath. So, as always, like I've been doing recently, if you, for instance, come to this and you're like, I don't care about From Dusk Till Dawn, but you're like, oh, I'm curious about what you had to say about this week's episode of Aftermath. Well, if you look in the description down below, you'll see the time I spent on, when I talked about each thing, obviously, where I started talking about Aftermath. I've always done that, but I'm not always that vocal about like, oh yeah, doing that. So just so that you know in the future, like, okay, anytime you see me talking about more than one show, in case it's like something you don't really care that much about, because I know not everything I watch is something everyone watches. I have my particular taste in things. I enjoy what I enjoy. So, maybe that matches up with some people, on some things. It might not match up with them on other things. But anyway, moving past that, first thing we're going to talk about is From Dusk Till Dawn. First off the bat, finally got Santanico / Kisa back. I literally kept bringing it up. It's like, where is she? Especially because I keep forgetting how close to the end of the season we are. This is like episode 8. So, I was looking up the list of episodes and I only saw episode 9, so I don't know whether they had put episode, because each season is usually 10 episodes, so either they just didn't have episode 10 up yet, because I don't really look at I just to make sure, like, oh, there is an episode next week or whatever, or just to make sure what the episode thing is. I don't really read into anything, because I like to go into episodes as blind as possible. But a lot of times I get screwed over because I end up watching previews and whatnot, but nevertheless, I was like, we're nearing the end of the season. It's like, when is she going to pop up? And it's like, okay, here she is, finally. But not only that, we saw the return of Carlos, which I really was not expecting it. Like, I brought it up, like, I think about it earlier this season, like how Wilmer Valderrama is currently on NCIS, so I was like, I was not expecting to see him at all, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it's probably like a smaller part of the season, so it's like, because it's kind of interesting, because I think around the same time the second season of From Dusk Till Dawn had started, he was also working on Minority Report, so I saw him on both shows at the same time, so it was weird. I mean, different shows have different production schedules, so it's like, it's not that big of a deal, but it's still kind of cool. It's like, seeing you just bouncing between different jobs like that, so that's kind of cool. But I did kind of like the fact is that she pieced him back together. I was like, I saw her with the bike. I was like, okay. I was like, oh, Santanico, it's got to be her because of the helmet and everything. And then I saw the bag with Carlos's head. I was like, whoa, wait. Oh, so it's not Santanico. It must be like Demi Lovato's character, like finally piecing back together. Nope, it's Santanico. Basically, her and Carlos ended up meeting up with the group, basically deciding to join forces. Which I was actually surprised how willing Seth was to be like, yeah, let's do it. Because even Carlos was kind of caught off guard, like, wait, what? Because, Seth is like, threatening, I could easily just cut you with this evolving blade, and it won't be that easy to kind of heal. But it's like, he's like, okay, he's like, wait, what? You didn't have Richie or anybody having any complaints. I mean, obviously, Freddie is like, if he's going to be a part of this, I'm out. I'm going to go, handle my side of things, where it's like, I'm going to try and track down my family and whatnot. So, that, okay, but no one else in the group, not Richie, not Scott, had any problems with it, so that was kind of interesting to me. Side note, I just kind of, because it was like, in the back of my head, because I was just mentioned Scott. Isn't that a little narcissistic that later on in the episode he was listening to his band's music? That's a little messed up. I mean, especially considering you killed one of your own bandmates. It seemed a little narcissistic that you're rocking out to your own music. I mean, it's not bad to kind of appreciate your own music. I mean, not unless that's music they made before him, but I'm pretty sure like Scott's the one that started the band and everything, so I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I'm weird. I know. It's just like I would never be able to really do that. Yes, I'd play something back just to hear what it sounds like, but just continuously listen to my own music, I wouldn't be able to do that. But that's just me. I'm just nitpicking about that. Nevertheless, the biggest part of this episode was tracking down Vengaza, last standing Lord. She's basically been in hiding this entire time, because Zamino kept bringing up like the fact that she had no idea where Vengaza was, and it turns out she had herself hidden away in a special prison. It's a prison that has both humans and culebras, but it's kind of run by the inmates, and she kind of hid out there. And it's like, you see this war is going on. You literally dragged the geckos into a fight that you knew they probably couldn't win. It's like you're dragging them in a fight to their deaths, and you're just out here hiding. Even Carlos was like, yo, what the hell are you doing? It's like you basically escaped from the Zabalbans. You were basically, originally the Culebros were the Zabalban slaves, just of the hierarchy. They were at the very bottom. And they left, they escaped, and they created this world. And even in this world, they kind of recreate, like basically saying that she was kind of following suit to the system. It's like, even though she escaped slavery, she ended up becoming a slave master of her own, kind of trying to run the Culebras. It's like, don't make that mistake, like, we're really kind of, it's like you're enslaving your own people. You came to this world to get away from being enslaved, and now you're kind of enslaving Culebras. Again, to like kind of basically don't make the Zabalban's job that much easier. Because it's kind of interesting seeing Carlos back in regard of like, I mean, there's part of the episode that kind of makes you go like, oh my, there he is, kind of up to his usual dickery where he's just kind of betraying everyone. But it's like, no, he was kind of giving Kisa a sign to be like, yo, that Zabalban dude is here. Which I need to learn that actor's name. Like, he was in the show Pair of Kings. He was also in Banshee. He was essentially a bad guy in Banshee. I'll just leave it at that. He had a very interesting power that basically he had like the marking / tattoos on his body that when he touches someone, he passes it on to them and it possesses them, and that said person can go off and touch other people and pass it on to it. He doesn't have to directly do it to everyone that he comes across. He can get the people he touches to touch other people and spread it like that. Literally in the back of my mind, kind of going in quote unquote weeb mode. I initially thought Naruto. I'm like, oh, it kind of reminds me of kind of like the curse mark, Orochimaru used on people. Like, for instance, Sasuke, anytime Sasuke activated his curse mark form and it just scrolled across his face. Well, not just Sasuke, anyone that had a curse mark, but weeb mode over. Nevertheless, in the episode, we ended up finding out some very interesting things. For one, that Amaru's body doesn't exist. Like, it's like, oh, obviously she's been after her body. It's been like, oh, she's after her bones and whatnot. But it's like, there's nothing left of her. The 9 lords consumed every bit of her. So basically, the only way that she could ever get kind of like, they consumed everything that is her, so that includes her essence and everything. So the only way she can get her body back is by killing all of them, because her body exists with, like, it's part of them. And so the only way she can get it back is by getting their ashes. Hence why she killed them. Yes, partly for revenge. I'm sure that was a pretty big motive to just like to kill them for what they did to her. But main reason was because each one of them consumed part of her body. So the last one standing is Vengaza, and she has the last pieces to Amaru's body. Because at first I was wondering, like, she was talking about, like, oh, you end up, if I end up dying, if I end up getting killed or whatever, it ends with me. This all ends with me. And I'm like, wait, what? And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, so we're going to end up finding out that she actually ended up possessing Amaru's body. That's not actually her real body. But it's like, no, it wasn't even anything like that. It's just that she literally ate every bit of her body. All 9 lords did, so. I'm really quickly kind of going back to, I kind of trailed off to it earlier. I kind of, my mind just clicked and I ran back to it. But the fact of the matter is, Carlos is kind of not the same douche he was. Like, he was kind of power obsessed, like, he was in season 1, he was a lackey that was kind of obsessed with power. Season 2, he kind of thought he was chosen, so it was a bit of a douche in that. But it seems like he might be an okay guy in this one. It seems like it's one of those situations where it's just kind of like, well, even people you hated in the past you're working with. Like, I'm bringing it up again, like Seth. Like, the fact is he was so accepting of it, like, yeah, let's work together. It's like, really? Like, how did you accept that so easy? Why is everyone okay with that? But it seems like Carlos might be okay. I do like the fact is that he went up against that guy, the Zabalban in this episode, and at first he touches Carlos, but the moment the markings come up to his bodies, they stop at one of the pieces of him that was sliced off, and it just kind of goes underneath his skin and disappears, and he doesn't get possessed. Will control, and I'm guessing it's because it couldn't completely travel up his skin because his body's so disconnected like that, because it's only held together by strings. So maybe it couldn't like trail across his skin because it's like, well, it's not, his skin isn't really connected. I don't know. That's the best way I can, not unless it's part of Carlos's ability, because basically his power is like being super strong and whatnot. That was kind of already established. That's kind of his thing. And he kicked that Zabalban dude's ass, like smashing his face into like that pillar of concrete, and his face is peeling off a little bit. I'm like, oh, dude. And especially when he does the finishing touch and rips his face completely off. I'm like, dude, this show gets me with just how bloody and gory it can get. I'm like, dude, that's crazy. I was expecting him to deal the final blow, but Kisa came up from behind and dealt it, so. A really an interesting thing, since I am talking about Kisa, is her reasoning for coming out. Initially, because Seth is like, yo, you ran away, and why did you come back? She's like, you said that vengeance isn't a good motivator, because it's like, even when you get your vengeance, you still feel with hate. So she ended up killing the Zabalban dude back in episode 2, the one that killed the woman she was with, her human counterpart. Well, her human significant other, I should really say. I mean, I think counterpart works, but I'll just refer to her as significant other. And, even with all that time that passed, she was saying, no, I'm still filled with hate. So she's like basically come back to kick some ass. But then later on, she tells Seth, yeah, that was actually a lie. The real reason I came back is because I was thinking about you. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, you don't mean like, and even Seth was kind of like, huh? Okay, I don't get this. She's like, Seth has basically been fighting for the Culebras, a fight that's not even really technically his. He's always had his problems with Culebras. Even at the beginning of the season, I kind of pointed out the fact is he has his reasons for fighting with them, but the fact of the matter is he doesn't treat Culebras like pieces of crap. Like he never really treated them like 100% crap. He just kind of like, he had his problems with the whole Richie situation. It's like, oh, he got left behind by Richie, because Richie was caught up in all of this and everything, becoming a Culebra himself. So it's partly because it's like, yeah, he's got to stick by his brother's side and protect his brother, but it's also because he realizes the Culebras aren't that bad. They have their issues, but the enemy, he says the enemy of my enemy thing, so it's kind of like it's his reason for sticking, but that was always the thing, though. Like, even though he acts like that, he is still fighting for the Culebras, even though he's a human. Like I said, he still has his own stakes in it because his brother's life, is affected by this too. So, but still, he does what he does. He actually does care about the Culebras in a sense. And Santanico, like, legitimately, that was something that kind of crossed my mind at the end of season 2, because it's like, Richie was kind of being manipulated by Malvado. Malvado showing him everything that Richie wants, because Richie's, power hungry and whatnot. And the way she was kind of getting inside of Seth's head, and they worked together to kill Malvado. I was thinking like something might happen between them, but it never did. But it was kind of like, I was like, that'd be kind of interesting thought. And it's like that just happening on a little bit, just kind of got in my head. I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, it just got in my head even more, especially when Seth was like, all right, feed. She's like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, you fed on your girlfriend without changing her right. Just go ahead, it'll help you heal faster. And she did it. And then I love Richie's reaction. She's like, what? She had to feed. He's like, yeah, good idea. He's like, but I got hurt a little bit. So, and Seth's like, no way, just screw off. And so I love that. Because it makes you wonder, because even Richie was kind of giving a look like, really? Like, because he's never done that before to anybody. Let's not forget this situation when Richie got a sword through his, a Zabalban blade through his like stomach/gut, so it's kind of like you would see Seth offering him blood back then, so it's just kind of interesting they would do it now. So like that's why I'm pushing, kind of like, hey, maybe something between him and Santanico. Hey, we had Freddy and Zamina. That just sucks. Side note, and since we're talking about Freddy, I know, like, I love how I'm doing all these transitions like that. It's so seamless, right? When Freddy was doing that whole situation, which I'll get to in a second, the fact of the matter is you had Tanner and Bert in the back of the truck just like getting high that entire time. And it's like first you can't stand each other, and now you're here getting high. And I love the fact that Bert is like, yeah, the best weed comes from the shadow realm, the world. It's like you have to get the right stuff to kind of be able to grow this good weed, but it's really, really good. That was kind of interesting. And he's like, do you know how long he's been in there? That's literally the only thing they did in this episode, was sit in a truck and get high. And that was all they did. And that's the last time we see him in the episode, too. So I don't know when Freddy does what he does later on in the episode when he kidnaps Vengaza. I don't know whether that's him, like after he had kicked them out because they were so stoned they weren't really paying attention. But nevertheless, like, I mean, well, since I'm talking about, like, he kidnaps her and everything, and it's like, oh, it's all a plan it's all a means to get his family back. Now, I don't know how to interpret that, whether it's like, oh, he's going through with this, making a deal with Braza to get his family back, Which I don't think Freddy's that stupid, because Freddy knows at the end of the day, like, Braza's not going to, like, especially because they need his wife and child. It's like, it's not going to work like that. Maybe he is. Maybe he's so desperate he doesn't care. He's willing to do whatever. But it's like, giving Amaru exactly what she wants isn't going to help anyone, because if she gets her body back, it's game over. So part of me is thinking, like, this is part of some plan of his. Like, he's pretending like he's working cooperatively. Like, okay, I'm going to give you this, you can get your body back, but it's all a ploy to get to his wife and child. Because he was talking to that guy, that ranger, his name was Willett. Don't know the actor's name. The most recent thing I remember seeing him play, I've seen him pop up in different things, but most recently, I think the last thing I saw him in was iZombie. He's the actor who played Blaine's dad. But he's apparently a ranger that works with the Zabalbans. And essentially, there was a whole conversation between him and Freddy about, like, the place of dead roads. That basically, that there were some rangers that kind of went a little rogue and they were hanging people up. He kind of informs Freddy that the people they were hanging up were culebras. Because that's kind of how they did it back in the day. Held them up, hung them from trees and waited till the sun comes out to kind of burn them or whatever. So that was kind of interesting how that, like, it was a one-off thing that seemed like it was just kind of a metaphor, but now you see that it's like a literal thing. The road to hell. I mean, it's a literal thing because that's kind of where, like, it's kind of the pathway towards Amaru, kind of the place where roads end. So, but the fact of the matter is, Freddy promised that guy, like, oh, I'll give you something more, kind of in exchange for what Amaru and Braza are promising. Because the fact is, Braza didn't give him all the details about what this all was about. He didn't tell them about Amaru's bones. He just wants a place in the new realm. But it's like, you're a human. It's like, do you really think I mean, culebras are already bottom of the food chain. It's like, you're going to be bottom of the food chain. So it's like, your loyalty is just not going to mean jack squat. So that's why I'm kind of thinking, like, he has some extra plan in mind. Like, what is Willett getting out of it that he was willing to let Freddy go? So it can't be as simple as just handing Vengaza over to them. So, but like I said, the season is counting down. So, I mean, I guess we'll just have to wait till next episode to see, what really goes down. Some final notes I kind of want to attack on the end of the episode. One, Scott taking down all those, like, guys and all, like, right before he got to Vengaza's little hiding place, like, everyone's there. Like, no one lifted a finger to help Scott, but he's just kicking ass all over the place. And you even have, like, Carlos being impressed, like, wow, somebody's been just really kicking it up a notch. She's like, yeah, you kind of haven't seen nothing yet. And so I also like the fact is that, because I thought it was something, I was like, okay, that Culebra that was fighting Richie, like, his tattoos kind of came to life and turned into blades. I was like, okay, so that's just, they are Culebras, and each Culebra kind of has their own special ability. I was like, I guess that's his. But it's like, no, apparently that was Tattoo Dude's special ability, that the Zabalban dude's ability, and I guess when he passes his mark on to other people, they get that power too, I guess. Not unless that's just something they shared. Just kind of want to kind of note on that too. And now moving on to this week's episode of Aftermath. Some interesting developments. For one, Sally getting bit by those, like, things, like those bugs. I don't know what they were. Like, I was halfway expecting locusts to come out of those bodies. It's like, oh, this guy's still alive. I'm like, oh, what's that sound? It's, oh, this guy's still breathing. It's like, okay, there's going to be some locusts to come out. It's like, nope, some, like, bugs that start crawling all over Sally and just all over her skin and everything. And it's just like, ugh. And then she gets sick. And later on in the episode, I'm like, that's not good. I was like, I wonder what that's going to do to you. I mean, but it turns out it's like, oh yeah, there was still one of them underneath her skin. So that sucked ass. I'm still very curious as to what they were. Were those natural bugs, or was that something else? Because it seems like even when you squished them, they multiply. Because there was like when you squished them, because they kept showing close-ups of it every time. Like someone step on one, and you kind of see blood kind of hit the camera a little bit too. But you see the little ones kind of spread out a little bit after one dies. So it's like, I guess they multiply like that. Because you even saw it at that part when like all those hotheads were put into a trailer. It was slowly killing them. So I guess like you get enough of them running through a body, they kind of eat through it and kill the person, because you saw blood splattering on the windows. Because the original bodies, like, they actually had no eye sockets, so it was kind of like, oh, did birds do that to them? But it seems like these things did, because they just feed on flesh. There was a whole situation with Dana in this episode, where it's like the fact is that she's not willing to use a gun. I mean, her reasons aren't completely I mean, when you look at the situation, kind of like, that's kind of irrational. Like, she's not a religious person, but the reason why she doesn't really use a gun is because she kind of believes in life. She loves life, and she doesn't feel right taking a life. Which I'm like, I guess that's the reason why she didn't actually use the gun last episode. She grabbed it, but it was meant to kind of threaten, and that's why she was so shocked. She's like, Dad, I can't believe you poisoned those guys. They were going to let us go. I was like, no, they weren't. So I had to kill them first, you know? So I guess that's where that kind of outrage came from. Because you notice during this whole situation, when people ended up dying, it's kind of like, the family kind of brushes it off, but she's kind of not the one. I guess she just kind of had her boiling point. It's like, yes, the family has to deal with that, but it's like, I haven't killed anyone, so... Like, her reasoning behind it, it's like, she didn't want to change. Like, because, you know, Matt kind of used the example of the fact is that, yo, when it came to hunting, you and Dad stayed at the house. Like, me and Brianna, we went out and did some hunting. But you see Dad, he's wielding a gun, like, you know, pretty good. So it's like, things change. They can't always stay the same. But Dana wants to stay the same because... it's kind of the only constant in this, like, ever-changing situation. Like, the situation is very fucked, and she just needs something to keep herself grounded. She needs to keep being herself because it's the only thing she can rely on staying the same. So it's understandable. But, I mean, that didn't help out Matt when he got too close and all those fever heads grabbed onto him like that. And it's like, she's trying to, like, shoot, like, she just can't bring herself to shoot the gun. The moment someone got shot, one of the hotheads got shot in the foot, I was like, oh, that was pretty good. Oh, that wasn't her, that was someone else. I was like, okay. Poor Matt was about to get torn to pieces. Which that whole situation took a turn I didn't expect. Like, the fact of the matter is, the guy, that soldier dude, was kind of threatening them with a gun. It's like, okay, I'm going to lock you up in there. It's like, oh, found out about the rest of your family. Okay, let me check to see if your family's infected. Then Karen kind of announces herself as being part of the Air Force. It's like, oh, they know a dude in common. And that kind of changes everything. They're all buddy-buddy. I'm like, you're kind of rolling with this dude. It's like, yo, he was just kind of threatening you not long ago. But I guess it's kind of like, hey, it's the end of the world. People act a little crazy about him. The fact is he calmed down and he's willing to help us. Especially when he was like, oh, let's go get some guns. And Dana's kind of like, well, couldn't someone else do it? Now, I don't know whether that was because it's like the whole gun situation. Like, I don't want to, you know, go there to get guns. Or was it because it's like, yo, you just kind of threatened my brother's life not too long ago. And my life too. So, like, I'd rather not go with you, Mr. I don't really know you that well, you know. But we did see a situation of her kind of like getting a little more comfortable with the situation. It's like, you know, the soldier kind of gave her a little bit of advice being like, all you can do is protect your family, you know, and just keep moving forward. And at some point, you know, down the road, you find yourself in a situation where you can't move forward. All you can do is like stay by your family's side and just go out in a blaze of glory, guns a-blazing, because it's like, you can sit there and wait, but you're just going to, you know, sit there and wait and die. So it's like, might as well go out swinging rather than just accepting death peacefully, you know, so. And I also had the whole situation of Sally staying behind. I wasn't expecting that. It's like we went through the trouble getting Sis to come along, and I was like, we're dropping her off. She's staying behind because, you know, the doctor dude ended up dying because one feverhead soldiers ended up killing him. But that was just kind of interesting that she's staying behind. I mean, she wants to help out and everything. So I wonder if we're going to run into her eventually down the road or not. I don't know. Then you had Brianna's situation this episode. The people in the whole community are treating her like crap. They're like, oh, she's possessed. Oh, she calls upon that demon or whatever. And she's like, are you people stupid? I know about this thing because I've come across it before. It's like really what makes them experts on it. It's like, oh, she summoned a demon. It's like she's familiar with it and everything. It's like, have you been to the outside world? Who's to say there's not a whole bunch of those things flying around and she knows it because she's come across them? But it's like, you know, people are, when they're so set in their ways and they're just not willing to listen to anything else, is because they believe what they know is right, that they're on the righteous path, and that anyone that doesn't agree with them is kind of on the wrong path. It's sad that they seem that way. I mean, it seems like the only decently level-headed one is Devin. I mean, he's still kind of stuck in his ways a little bit too, but not as much. He's not as rigid as the other ones. But sadly, it kind of seems like that's only because it's Brianna. I liked how the fact is that she was in the room washing, and he was watching her like a pervert. And he talks about it later on. He was like, yeah, I sinned. So part of me was wondering, like, I didn't know how to interpret that. Was the sin the fact is that you were watching her bathe? Or was the sin the fact is that you did something afterwards? My brain instantly went there. He's like, I committed a sin. I was like, did you masturbate after you watched her, dude? That's crazy. And even Vienna was like, you were watching me? He's like, yeah, I saw your arms and I saw your back. It's like, dude, he's really, really into her. Because even throughout the fact is he was like, oh yeah, we should go to the lake or whatever, and then like I assume the lady's his mom was like, no, you need to go take a shower or something and kind of cleanse yourself. No, do hard work and kind of cleanse yourself with those thoughts because she was thinking like, oh, Brienne is trying to manipulate him and trying to put these impure thoughts in his head. I'm completely glancing over the fact is that the Reverend was possessed, and he tried to kill Brianna at first. He was choking her, and he was calling her the killer of hosts. So I don't know whether that's because like Brianna has technically killed one of those. I mean, well, the skinwalkers before, because the skinwalker that took her, and then like it was coming to get her, and she kind of moved, and it fell on wood that was kind of sticking up. So I don't know whether that's the case or not. Something subsequently that came up earlier that I'd never kind of gone back to, not in this particular episode, but prior, is the fact of the matter is there was the person that kidnapped her. It's like he kind of snapped out of being possessed and was kind of like, oh no, like where am I? What's happening to me? So, and then afterwards he ended up turning back. So it's like, we haven't seen that again. So it's like, what makes them lose control of people? Is it kind of like their consciousness kind of coming back to the surface or what? I mean, that was just something that was kind of in the back of my mind. Because that was kind of something I was wondering about too. I was like, okay, so is the Reverend actually ignorant to what's happening to him, or does he actually know and he's just playing dumb? I mean, either one was kind of a possibility, because I love the fact that he turned to it, like the lady walked in, what's her name, Elena, she walked in, she's like, oh, I heard the devil speaking. He's like, yeah, it was her, I had to defend myself, and what, she's like, he's lying to you, he's possessed. She's like, oh, how could you be so foolish? Essentially, because Devin kind of said to himself, it's like, he's, the holier a person is, the less likely they are to be possessed, which granted, Brianna had some key points. It's like, why would it, demons are pretty smart. Why would they possess someone that is basically distrusted by everyone? Why not pick the person that everyone trusts the most? Which, I mean, now that I think about it, and I'm thinking about it out loud, it's like, well, who's to say they really, I mean, we don't know. We don't know how far they're intelligent to go, whether they choose people at random, which it seems like that might be the case, or maybe it's a calculated move. Nonetheless, I don't know. The question I'm wondering is, how long was he possessed? Has he always been like that? Have there ever been people before Brianna? Because there was going to be like a whole trial and everything about what to do with her afterwards. So, I don't know. I mean, we kind of left that community behind, and it's kind of like, I guess we'll never cross paths with them again. It makes me wonder, like, the girl that tried to steal Brianna's phone, that Brianna kind of like pointed the gun at her and everything, is like, will we be crossing paths with her again? Maybe not. I'm assuming maybe those are kind of one-off characters, but you never know. In an apocalypse situation like that, you leave kind of dangerous people alive, they tend to come back and bite you hard in the ass. So, I mean, just kind of something to keep in mind. So, it shouldn't be too surprised if we happen to see them kind of pop up again. It's kind of where I'm leaving that at. But she was right, though, that the Reverend was chasing after them. And, because I was wondering, because as we've seen it, like, because the fact is his eyes looked a little different, so I wasn't thinking he was one of the skinwalkers. I was thinking like, oh, he's something else entirely, like the way he was talking and stuff like that. So I was like, I thought he was like a monster or something. Like last episode, Matt had what was the thing he actually referred to him as? I forgot. It was just they're basically monsters that basically drag you. They take your bones and basically drag you back to the water. I forgot what the exact words that Josh used to say, like, describe them as. I don't remember now. But he met those last episode, and plus the whole skinwalker thing. So it's like, so I was thinking, like, okay, we're dealing with more monsters, but it's like, no monsters we've kind of come to know, skinwalker. So that's kind of good. I mean, not necessarily good, but it's like the evil you know versus the evil you don't, So... And another thing, like, I just think it was the most interesting, because I was halfway expecting Devin to get killed in this episode. I was, because I was expecting it at every turn. I'm like, okay, him and Brianna have officially kind of become a thing, because it's like, she's like, okay, so will you come along with me? He's like, I'll go anywhere with you. And she kind of like, okay, good. And he's like, so does this mean you're my girl now? She's like, one thing at a time, Devin. Ends up kissing him multiple times throughout the episode. It's just like, I was like, oh, that's so cute. It's like, but he's about to die now, isn't he? It's like, I know the Reverend's in the woods chasing after you. Ugh, he's going to die. Oh, you made it to the road and your family's there. It's like, he's going to, I was like, because the longer it kept going on, and the fact is that they were okay and the Reverend hadn't caught up with me, I was like, oh man, they're going to get to the road and Brianna's going to be there, and like something's going to happen, and the Reverend's going to end up killing Devin, and it's just going, oh, it's going to suck. But nope, everyone ended up surprisingly surviving, so that was good. I mean, Devin's kind of going along. I mean, for one, Brianna's reunited with her family, fantastic, and she gets to bring her boyfriend along too, which was, like I said, I wasn't expecting. I was really expecting Devin to die. I mean, granted, the whole situation doesn't end very well for them because it's like, oh, they're being chased by about to call them hotheads, feverheads at the end of the episode. So, I mean, not the best situation, but they are reunited. So it's gonna be interesting to see what they decide to do with Devin from here on out, because it's kind of like he's just kind of like caught up in his own thing, kind of like, oh, this is the way things are and whatnot. So he's kind of like old fashioned and whatnot. So I'm curious to see like how that would progress, because Brianna actually had a boyfriend before this was all said and done. She kind of wanted to be with him around this, before things went to hell. So I mean, I wonder how does this all factor into that, or just kind of like, I guess around the time she met that girl who also had a boyfriend, the one who wanted to steal Brianna's phone because she wanted to get in contact with her boyfriend. I don't really know if that was really the truth or not, or whether she just wanted to be just want to be an asshole or not. But, she hasn't really mentioned her boyfriend since like the first episode. So nevertheless, a very interesting episode. I'm just very curious to see where things go from here. This show gets weirder and weirder with every episode, and I kind of love it for it. So, but that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.